Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Ever since the world shut down, crippling small businesses, decimating communities, and filling us all with fears of certain death, the response from politicians and world government has been disturbingly inadequate, to say the least. Instead of educating the public on how to strengthen our immune system, politicians have preyed on people's fears, divided us, locked us inside, forced us all to cover our faces with cloth, and socially distance all the while. But there's a big difference between socially distancing and physically distancing. I'm beginning to feel that this choice of words was not an accident. Also used as a form of torture, social distancing and isolation, especially combined with too much social media and screen time, destroys our relationships and damages our mental health. Living in a constant state of anxiety and fear is just about the worst possible thing for our health and well-being. When our mental health suffers, our physical health falls apart. And at some point, we'll all have to acknowledge that mental health actually matters. But harboring resentment and anger, even if you are a good person trying to do the right thing in a very strange environment, that hurts us a lot too. That doesn't help us at all. So we'll talk in this show today about how to deal with all these crazy feelings that we may or may not be experiencing right now. Today, we're here with Amy Morin, an author, speaker, licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and psychology lecturer at Northeastern University. Her TED Talk is one of the most popular of all time. If you're looking to build your mental strength and fortitude, this is the episode for you. But before we get there, here's a note that came in from Meg. She says, "Hi Abel, I have a long commute to work and have almost solely been listening to your podcast during it. You, the wild eating, it makes sense. We're not interested in dieting, but are very interested in eating for our best selves." I like that distinction. "You have been a major eye-opener. Looking around the grocery store is now moderately disgusting. The stuff we can buy, the stuff that's made for us to eat, it's totally sad. When my hubby first met me, I used to cook with salad dressings for stir-fry sauces. He since has helped me learn real from not real food, ingredients in butter versus margarine, homemade ranch versus plastic store-bought versions, and you, Abel, have took us even further. Thanks for your journey and your very fascinating guests. You're helping shape our future, Meg and Mike." Meg and Mike, thank you so much for this note. It's true. I mean, grocery stores these days especially are packed with fake foods made often of plastic, and certainly leaching plastic the way that they're packaged. And it takes a pretty keen eye these days to make sure that what you're eating is clean enough and high quality enough to actually consume. And now that even organic, hippy-dippy, Whole Foods type stores are owned by Amazon, looking around these health food stores is also moderately disgusting. You see a lot of things, even with the labels, you know, vegan, vegetarian, paleo, keto, carnivore, whatever on it, and they're not respecting that dietary paradigm whatsoever. And then, of course, you have the junk food, all the shelf-stable stuff. But our food system, our food supply is worth paying attention to right now. A lot of people are trying to sweep this under the rug, but food security is going to be a massive issue looking toward the future. So to the extent that you can, try to focus on your health and effective fueling, effective nutrition right now, because I don't believe it's going to get easier to do so. But if you especially find the local availability of quality foods, and you know how to, buy a few things inexpensively that really fill you up, or even better, grow them yourself or forage for them in a wild environment, that is max level. You're going to do okay as long as you keep adapting, but definitely keep an eye on your food. But, it's wonderful to hear that your hubby, Mike, has helped distinguish those nourishing real foods from the well-marketed, plasticky, fake stuff, because the marketing is very compelling. The claims they make are nonsense, though. But take margarine, for example. Cats won't eat it. Rats won't eat it. Flies won't even touch the stuff. But according to government recommendations that lasted for many decades, Margarine was supposed to be better for us than butter. Butter causes heart attacks and kills you, and margarine's a free lunch. That's not how it works. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So this all begs the question, why would we ever trust these puppets of industry again? We'll dig in more on today's show, of course. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with me and share some of your results, or you have a question, be sure to sign up for our newsletter over at fatburningman.com. When you enter your email, you can just reply to me. I'm able@fatburningman.com. I read and reply to many more messages than most people expect, so it's great fun to connect with you there. You can also sign up for the free newsletter. You just go to, from any device, mobile, tablet, or your computer, or your VR goggles, go to fatburningman.com/bonus. That's fatburningman.com/bonus. We'll set you up with a bunch of freebies there. And if you'd like to look into supporting your adrenals during this wacky time and keep stress in check, then be sure to check out our new formulation from our family company, Wild Superfoods, called Adrenal Stack. Right now, we're only in the US, but we're working on getting it into some other countries soon. We're a small family business, mostly just me and my wife. My mom, a holistic nurse practitioner, helps out as well. And then we have a small team of contractors that kind of grows and shrinks depending on our projects. But when you purchase from us, you're helping us keep the lights on, keep the show coming to you. We really appreciate it. Adrenal Stack is a powerful combo of nutrients and botanicals, a stack of some of my personal favorites. You'll be getting 111% of your daily recommended dose of vitamin C, along with a synergistic blend of adaptogenic herbs and nutrients, including American ginseng, rhodiola, ashwagandha, B vitamin, Siberian ginseng, licorice, and more. Especially during these challenging times, Adrenal Stack is a really nice one to have on hand. You can grab the new formula over at wildsuperfoods.com as long as you're in the US. You can even sign up for my newsletter over at Wild Superfoods and get an extra 15% off our goodies there. From any device, please just visit wildsuperfoods.com. And also a quick note, if you are international or not, check out our new Patreon community, our new Patreon channel at patreon.com. Look up Able James there. You can join for just a few bucks a month, or you can throw a few bucks into the tip jar to help keep this show going. And I've had a great time connecting with a lot of you there, and even have a few spots for one-on-one coaching. So go to patreon.com/AbleJames for that. All right, on to this show with Amy Morin, where we're discussing specific mental strength exercises to manage your emotions, regulate your thoughts, and take more productive action. How to train your brain for happiness and success, facing your fears and taking back your power, how to raise self-assured children, and tons more. Let's go hang out with Amy. All right, folks. Amy Morin is a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist turned accidental author who is now on her 4th book. Amy's wonderful TEDx talk, The Secret to Becoming Mentally Strong, is one of the most popular talks of all time with more than 14 million views. She's also a psychology lecturer at Northeastern University, and her new podcast, Mentally Strong People, will be coming to you live from her floating podcast studio in the Florida Keys, where she lives on a sailboat. Thanks for joining me on the show today, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
From the boat, no less.
From the sailboat, yes.
I believe this is my first boat interview, which is pretty exciting for me. But my wife and I lived out of an RV for about a couple years, just traveled around the country and went to national parks and went shopping for our place where we wanted to eventually settle down, which was Colorado. But recording from an RV or a boat definitely has its own challenges. And not only are you doing guest interviews, but you're also starting your own from the boat. So let's just start right there. That sounds like a crazy risk that very few people would ever find themselves experiencing.
Yeah, so when I wrote my first book, I lived in Maine and was living in a house, and it was cold, and I thought, okay, if I'm going to become an author, I don't have to live here anymore. So a boat in the Florida Keys sounded good. And so we packed up and moved relatively quickly. And then, I've been writing and I do a lot of speaking and traveling and that sort of thing. But with the pandemic, my speaking gigs were canceled. So I really had to pivot my business and figure out what do I want to do next. And a podcast seemed like a great idea. But it does pose some challenges. If I want to do an interview and get really good audio quality, I have to shut off the air conditioning.
Yep.
And so in the summer on a sailboat without air conditioning, it got really hot at times.
And the Keys, man.
Even for an hour at a time, it doesn't take long to get hot. And you can't control the weather. When it's rainy or windy, it's loud sometimes. So it gives my audio engineer some challenges.
But it's kind of cool, right? Because there's been a change, I think, in the past, well, since the pandemic, since people were kind of like not allowed out, not allowed to go to work anymore. Everyone's stuck at home with their cats and their dogs and their children and the air conditioners and whatever else, the thunderstorms, the just connections cutting out for no reason and being really bad when they should be good. Everyone, whether they're going to school and their kids or they're like us doing podcasts and trying to do the virtual speaking thing, which I'm in a similar boat, so to speak, there, where I was supposed to be like probably dozens of speaking engagements deep at this point, and instead it's just a goose egg. It's zero. You have to move it all online, and that's there are a lot of people in that position. So for you, coming from doing a lot of in-person speaking especially, how has that transition been, and how have you mitigated the downsides?
Yeah, it's tough. So some of my engagements were canceled altogether. Some of them were rescheduled for next year. Some of them were delayed because in the beginning of the pandemic, we thought, oh, this will be over by fall. Yeah. And then they got delayed again. And some of them went virtual, which speaking to a virtual audience is so much different than being on stage. You don't get to see people's reactions, and you have technical difficulties, and even taking audience's questions through chat boxes as opposed to seeing them. You don't get to interact with them before you get on stage. So it's definitely brought some challenges, but people have been so gracious and patient and understanding. And when people show up to a Zoom talk as opposed to meeting in person, their expectations are a little different too, but it gives us a different way to interact too. I find that sometimes people who might not attend a huge conference in person are much more willing to tune in online during their lunch break, or they'll send me emails before and after, or something about speaking on Zoom. It's like we're all in this sort of together, and I find that people will then are more likely to reach out to me sometimes by email or on social media and want to talk about whatever presentation I just gave. So in some ways it's been kind of cool to connect with people in a different way.
That's making me think that's a really interesting point, that, introverts get swallowed up in public places usually. They're not the first to talk to the speakers. They probably won't get to ask a question or whatever, just due to the nature of their personality. But online, it's like the introverts can be especially empowered, and there's actually a lot of good in that, I think.
I think so too. And I think, when I give virtual presentations, sometimes there's the opportunity for people to ask questions anonymously, so they can submit their question without knowing. And since I talk about mental strength, it's a sensitive subject for some people. They don't dare ask the question. When they can submit it to a chat box, it's a lot easier. And I think you're right that for introverts, it's an easier way to connect. I know when I'm done speaking, sometimes there'll be several people that want to come up and talk to me afterward. And then there's other people I'll get an email from that said, I wanted to talk to you, but I didn't dare. But those people, I think, now get to send me an email too, just like everybody else, or they'll reach out to me on social media, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but there are definitely advantages and opportunities at the same time that there are big downsides too.
Right. Yes. I'm looking forward to traveling again.
Yeah, me too. And we're stuck in wonderful places too, right?
Right.
You're in the Keys, I'm up in the mountains of Colorado. We're stuck in wonderful, wonderful places, and I love it here, but I still can't wait to get out. What's that about?
Well, and I know that I'm fortunate because when we had a stay-at-home order, well, my home moves. So if I'm on a boat, I could go wherever I want to go still. I wasn't stuck. And I talked to so many people that, lived in apartments and they literally couldn't go anywhere. They were afraid to get on the elevator because it's so crowded, or they just couldn't. They didn't feel safe leaving their houses in order to get outside. I've got to get outside every day, even when we're in a stay-at-home order, and I feel so fortunate for that. Yeah.
So no matter what situation you're in, though, our mental strength and fortitude is it feels like there are forces that are whittling away at it, whether it's, very sinister or not. That whole part doesn't even matter. Like what's happening to us and our children, covering up faces, the fear from strangers, and just the lack of the nutrient of being social that most of us need, it has been taken away from us for the most part. So especially with your background and your areas of expertise, How are you reframing all this?
So a lot of it is just about realizing, okay, what's important in my life? What kinds of things do I miss? What kinds of things did I used to do just out of habit that I don't necessarily want to go back to? And figuring out what are my coping strategies. For a lot of us, we lost our usual go-to coping skills. You couldn't go out for coffee with your friends. You can't maybe you can't go outside as much, or you can't go to the gym. So how do you deal with uncomfortable feelings? And it's challenging sometimes to figure that out if you are sitting in your living room and a lot of your usual coping strategies are gone. I've heard from so many people who say, I'm struggling with overeating or reaching for alcohol way more often. And so for me, it was just about really realizing what other coping strategies can I lean on right now, and how do I make sure that I'm still taking care of myself, even if it looks different than it did 6 months ago.
Yeah, and coping strategies can look radically different depending on who you are and how you handle it. And I think what's happening, some of it's generational, some of it's just because people cope in different ways, but people are ragging on each other for the way that they're handling all of this or coping with it, right? So like I hear a lot of people saying, you shouldn't be playing video games and wasting all your time on social media or wasting all your time doing X, Y, or Z that they don't do. Right? That is another form of escapism, where they're probably an alcoholic or they're overeating, but they're ragging on someone else for playing video games. And so none of these things are 100% bad or 100% good, but maybe it's important to kind of recognize that you are using eating, video games, social media, drugs, or worse, or anything else as a coping mechanism, and it's feeding an addiction that we'll need to undo. And that's one of the things that's most concerning about all of this, is there's a lot of damage being done, especially in kind of invisibly, to our mental health that will take a long time to undo. So maybe you can you help, for the people who don't understand, the other people who are overeating or the other people who are going to booze or drugs or whatever, can you help them understand what's going on there?
Right. So we all figure out, how do you deal with an uncomfortable feeling? Maybe you're anxious, maybe you're lonely, maybe you're sad, maybe you're scared. So then it becomes an opportunity of how are you going to cope with it? And for all of us to know that there's things we can do to manage those emotions. And it doesn't mean you have to be happy all the time. You don't have to feel good all the time. Sometimes you should be sad. Sometimes you should be anxious. And I think as a society, sometimes we're a little bit phobic about being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When we have a little anxiety, we're really quick to do something to make sure we don't feel anxious anymore. And we all have different strategies that we reach for, as you mentioned. And so we look for things that reduce the intensity of our feelings and that reduce the duration of them. And that's not always a bad thing, because you don't want to get stuck in a sad mood. You don't want to get stuck in a cycle of anxiety. Sometimes you need to break free from that. But we all use different strategies to do that. Sometimes someone might read a book. Someone else might play video games. Somebody else watches professional sports. To just take a look at, what do you use in your life to regulate your mood? And some people just depend more heavily on unhealthy strategies than others. And we are quick to judge other people. Like somebody that watches a lot of professional sports is quick to judge somebody that plays video games and saying, you're wasting your time. Well, guess what? And to know that it's okay, that it's not damaging until it becomes a problem in your life. So for instance, if you reach for a bowl of ice cream, but it doesn't create any new problems in your life, that's okay. But if you're reaching for 17 bowls of ice cream, then after a while it creates new problems. It introduces different issues in your life and just makes you suffer more in the long term. So I think it's important to look at any coping skill we use, even like reading a book. If somebody reads a book to the point that they then don't face their problems, then it becomes an issue too. If you're reading so much that you aren't paying your bills, well, then reading is a problem. So it's not necessarily the thing that we use, it's the amount of problems that thing creates in our life, whether it really solves them in the long term or it creates new ones over time.
Yeah. And another piece that's definitely all throughout your work that's worth bringing up now is that your feelings are okay. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay whether they're good or bad or anything in between. It's important to experience them and let yourself experience them, because once you do and you kind of get ahead of it, then you can start to manage what your coping skills and mechanisms are, how you actually handle all of this and react to it.
Right. We talk so much about emotional intelligence as if we have arrived, as if we all know exactly what we're doing. But the truth is, when I give a talk to a group of could be really high profile business people, executives, and I say, I'll give you 30 seconds, write down as many feeling words as you can. The average number that they come up with is 5, right?
In
We can
30
only
seconds?
right. You know,
Wow.
you get beyond happy, sad, mad, you just start to run out of ideas because we don't talk about feelings. We're so far removed from our emotions that you can't even think of a feeling word off the top of your head for the most part. So I think it's really important for us to just get more in touch with how am I feeling today? In fact, there's science behind it. If you just label your emotions, it takes a lot of the sting out of them. So if you just sat down and said, gosh, I'm really sad today, you'll start to feel a little bit better. Or if you said, I'm really anxious right now, you feel a little less anxious just by naming it. And then to know it doesn't have to be scary. So, all right, you feel a little sad today. We all have bad days. It doesn't mean you have to cause yourself to become happy, or you don't have to run around all day feeling bad that you feel bad. So sometimes you can just accept it. And it's about recognizing, all right, is this emotion serving me well or not? Because so often we talk about feelings like they're either good or bad, that feeling happy is good and feeling angry is bad. But the truth is, all of our emotions serve a purpose. They can all be helpful sometimes, but they're also have the potential to be unhelpful sometimes too. So instead of thinking, is this good or bad, just ask yourself, is this helpful right now or not so helpful? Even, you know, the emotions we think are positive, like excitement, can be unhealthy for us. How many times have you ever seen somebody who's so excited about a business opportunity that they're convinced they can't fail and they don't look at the downsides of it because they're so excited? So I think if we just asked ourselves that question a little more often, how do I feel and how is it affecting me? Then we wouldn't be so scared of those uncomfortable emotions when we have them.
And what am I going to do about it? What am I going to choose to do about it instead of what am I just going to do? Like, you know, 99% of the time we're just running on autopilot. We go to the booze, we go to the drugs, we go to the overeating or whatever it is, the escapism. But the way that I like to see it is that there are different ways to escape. And that's not always bad either, right? Like escapism from this modern world could look horribly wrong, could look horribly bad. Like just the, you know, stereotype of the hippie who's completely checked out and blissed out all the time and always happy no matter what's going on. Like that might not be super useful right now.
Right.
There, you need to at some point accept that we are in some sort of reality here, but we do have a decision on how we handle all of this. And checking out is a perfectly normal reaction. I've kind of done it myself where you just you put it over here, you ignore it. It's not there anymore. It's like you shut your eyes and nobody can see you, but that's not quite how it works. So how do you help people first kind of acknowledge those feelings and then realize that it is a choice, that they're not just forced to automatically continue these negative behaviors and habits and addictions, but they actually have a way to manage this and maybe channel it into something that can improve their lives?
The first strategy is usually to figure out, what are we going to do? Do we need to solve the problem, or do we need to solve how you feel about the problem? And it sounds really simple on the surface, but when you dive a little deeper, sometimes we take the wrong approach. So for example, if somebody has a family member with a health problem, you probably can't cure their health problem. So in that case, your strategy is to say, okay, how do I cure how I feel about the problem? How do I address it from that angle? But let's say you're in debt. There's something you can do about that, whether you decide I'm going to go get another second job to earn more money, or I'm going to work on creating a budget for myself. But so often people will say, I'm going to work on how I feel about that problem rather than actually solve the problem. Yeah. So they'll say, you know, I'm going to lock myself in my room and stay in bed for 3 days rather than face the facts. Or I'm going to do some more retail therapy because it makes me feel good rather than looking at the stack of bills.
Retail therapy.
And so a lot of times we just start right there with, okay, is this a problem you can solve, or do you just need to work on how you feel about the problem? And then to figure out, okay, well, what are your emotions in dealing with this problem? What kind of things get stirred up for you? and then developing a clear plan. All right, what are your current coping skills? And I don't want to take those coping skills away from people. So if somebody has some really unhealthy coping strategies, I'm not just going to say, hey, don't do that anymore, because that doesn't work. We need to replace them with something. So if somebody's been turning to something and it's not serving them well, we'll come up with other strategies. And it's really, like you said before, about what works well for us. Some people are into meditation. They're happy to do yoga. Other people aren't. Other people say, yeah, that really is not my thing. And if you try to force something that's not your thing, even when you're not feeling it, it's not going to work. You're not going to stick with it. So we'll say, let's find something else. And, you know, it's all about whatever helps you be your best and feel your best and do your best in life. And I just wrote an article recently. Business Insider had asked me, how do you take care of yourself? Do you meditate? Do you do yoga? Do you write in a journal? And I said, actually, I have a wave runner and I go really fast on it, and that's my strategy.
That's
like
great.
I live on a sailboat. It's pretty calm and cool all the time. I don't need to, you know, necessarily do tons of meditation, yoga, and journaling to feel better. I actually kind of want some more excitement in my life. So that's what I find helps me. But for somebody else who, say, is super anxious and they live a chaotic life, then they probably want to incorporate some more quieter, reflective practices in their life that help them do their best.
Yeah, that's such a great point too. And I have a similar way of dealing with it, because like most people who know me in real life think that I'm pretty grounded and laid back. But inside, especially after long days of working, when things aren't working out, just, you know, stuff going wrong or whatever, I'm full of anxiety, frustration, just kind of gassed out, overworked, cranky, like everyone else gets. And if I tried to, and I've tried this, just sit down and meditate it away, I don't know. I'm not that enlightened. I can't handle that. But if I go up and run up a mountain for like 2 hours and do hardcore sprints and just go way to the other side of that, then I come back and I feel so much better every time. I feel like a new person. I sleep really well that night. I've worked things out on that run and I've challenged myself. So sometimes it seems like, yes, you can kind of calm down anxiety, but it's kind of like trying to do that before you go on stage. You know, some people say, just take all these deep breaths and don't talk to anyone for 15 minutes or whatever and try to erase the world away. Or you can just kind of double down on the excitement. And as long as you're not going into excited puppy mode and you kind of rein it in, then you can use these as coping mechanisms. To me, performance, working hard, working out hard, or just playing hard like you, like going out on the wave runner and doing something exciting can help mitigate that anxiety. It almost just like shakes it all away.
And it's all about self-awareness and knowing what works for you. Because as you say, if you go backstage behind a big event, so when I did a TEDx talk, half the people behind stage are reading their notes, they're meditating, they've got, you know, calming music in their ears. Other people are jumping up and down, trying to get themselves, you know, pumped up to go on stage. And there isn't a right or wrong answer. For some people, it's helpful to get in that calm state. For other people, it's much more helpful to get pumped up. I'm one of those people. If I try to get myself in a calm state, it's not going to work. My body's like all ramped up. And if I calm myself down for 2 seconds, I'm going to step out on stage and I'm going to be right back ramped up. So I'm better off to just embrace it and remind myself of this is excitement. It's not necessarily fear and anxiety. And I don't have to be calm. I can deliver it, talk and do a good job when I'm ramped up. But that doesn't work for everyone. So I think if we're all more self-aware of what helps us, and if running up a mountain is what helps you, then to know this is my outlet, rather than sitting and, you know, writing in a journal. Or for those of us, like, I'm an author, so writing in a journal at the end of the day isn't exactly a treat. I've spent all day typing behind my computer. So for me, that's not really going to work. But if I can, you know, take a break from staring at my computer to go do something exciting, that's when I feel better.
But you have to learn that, right? You have to learn, like, There's no one who told me, hey, you're feeling anxious and you're feeling frustrated. Why don't you try running up a mountain to 10,000 feet? Like, no one told me that. You have to try a lot of different things. You have to try things that you weren't expecting to like. Trying new things, new experiences is really important, especially now. And then one thing that really, no matter what the outside world is like, that which to some degree we cannot control, it's out of our control. Something that always keeps me going is the idea of progressing in skills, in you know, the shape that I'm in for whatever goal I might have or activity that's coming up later or challenge or that sort of thing. So maybe you can help people understand how to build that into their own lives too, because there's one way to handle it, eating a cake and Ben & Jerry's, or you can find that mountain to run up, or that jet ski, or whatever else is right for you. But it takes a few times for your brain to really link that reward, right, to that difficult behavior. And oftentimes, like, it's not it's not fun punishing yourself or working out super hard, right? Like it is and it's not. But the first few times it's really not, because you're kind of stuck in the moment, you're stuck in the pain, and your brain hasn't linked yourself to all of the sweat, all the endorphins, all of the just like achievement at the end of doing something like that on a regular basis. So is there anything you can do to kind of accelerate those links that your brain makes between behavior and the way that you feel?
So I think it's all about experimenting and then keeping track of it. So 'cause sometimes people will say in my therapy office, like, oh, that's never going to work for me. Well, you don't know until you try. And then they'll try it once and be like, yeah, that didn't work. But nothing works well usually the first time. So even if somebody said, I was going to learn how to meditate, but I'm really bad at meditating. Well, you're not supposed to be good at it. The first time you sit down to do it, you're going to be bored. Your mind's going to wander and you're going to think this is awful. But how do you get better at it is through practice. So I'll give people an amount of time to try something. Do it for 10 minutes a day and do it for 14 days. And then we'll figure that out. Some people actually keep a mood diary or a log. All right, so I was really anxious and I did this. Did my anxiety go up or down? And sometimes we don't notice it because it's so subtle. So even though we've been doing something for a while, we don't really notice that we feel better. So it could just be as simple as write down your mood before. Maybe 1 to 10, you're going to give it a grade. So, all right, so my anxiety is an 8. So then I sat down and I wrote in a journal. When I was done, how's my mood? Maybe it went down to a 7. Great. So you just keep doing that every day, and then you see, what do you notice for a pattern? If you do it for 14 days, did it get better? Did it get worse? Do you find it to be helpful? And if that really doesn't work for you, great. Let's try something else. Let's run up a mountain for the next 2 weeks and see if that works. And if we did more experiments, and I think if we kept a little bit better track, because it's so easy for people to think, I'm not getting any better. And as a therapist, I can remind people, remember 3 months ago when we first met? Remember where you were and the things you were going through and the problems you had and the things you thought you couldn't do? And I can bring that up and remind them. But not everybody has a therapist to reflect that back to them. So we need to figure out, how do we do that for ourselves? And sometimes it's just a matter of keeping some sort of track of it. And for people that say, I'm not going to write in a journal, or that's not helpful, there's apps you can get. Maybe you just have a day planner and you just put a number in the corner of how's my mood today from 1 to 10, and just look at it over time, or what kinds of things helped you. There's a study that showed too, just writing things down made a huge difference. When they asked people how often they worked out, they took 2 groups of people, and these are people that worked out a couple times a week. So they told half of the group, why don't you start just putting a check mark on the calendar on the days that you actually work out? And they told the other group nothing. Well, they found the people that just put a check mark on the calendar increased the amount of times they worked out from, say, 2 times a week to like 5 or 6 times a week. That was the only intervention. Wow. They just looked at their calendar and went like, oh, it's a check mark. Something about that. They were able to keep themselves accountable. It motivated them more. So I think just those little things that we do in life to hold ourselves more accountable. Sometimes I'll get emails from people that say, I need you to hold me accountable, or I need somebody else, or I need to find an accountability partner. That can work sometimes, but I think we need to figure out, how do we take more accountability for ourselves? And so maybe it's just a monthly calendar that you put a check mark on. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah, I definitely use that. I've been a huge fan ever since I was in grade school of scribbling things out after you do them, check boxes, yeah. and also a thing that I do almost every single day, and I don't really consider it journaling, but other people might, is I write down what my priorities are, and I make big boxes and squiggles and scribbles and all of that, and I allow it to be, just as it was and what worked when I was in high school, when I was taking too many classes and it was really hard. You have to get organized and you have to take responsibility yourself, and sometimes that's by adding meditation and adding things to your life, but oftentimes it's dumping a bad habit, right? It's so easy to ignore all of these things that are horribly, horribly wrong. Like, I'll use an anonymous example of someone who was having a hard time losing weight, and she was doing everything right. Like, her diet, she was eating whole foods, she wasn't eating junk foods, she was moving appropriately, and she just wasn't losing weight, and she was getting frustrated. And so we're just like, all right, let's find the thing that you're not telling us about. Let's find out what that is. And it turns out she's just like, you know what? Well, I do love cheese. And we're like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, at lunchtime, I tend to have a bit of cheese because I really like cheese. And I'm like, well, how much cheese are we talking here? And she's like, I don't know, 12, 16 ounces. And I'm like, you eat a whole thing of cheese every day for lunch in addition to lunch? Like, okay, there it is. There it is. Even though it's so... What, to me, that's an example of a loophole that we all find for ourselves, right? It's whole food, it's real food, it's grass-fed, it's expensive, and I like it, so here it is. But if you do that every day, it's not going to serve you. So how do we find these little loophole bad habits that we set up for ourselves?
I love that you say that, because so many people come into my therapy office in a very similar place where they'll say, you know, I have been going to yoga and I added this gratitude journal to my day, and I'm doing all of this stuff, and they'll have specialists that they see for everything and a million appointments, and they're like, but I don't feel better. What's going on? There's something wrong with me. And we'll take a look at just a couple of their bad habits, and it might be something like, gosh, you sit around and spend an hour a day writing in a gratitude journal, but you spend the rest of the day sort of feeling sorry for yourself. Well, that 1 hour of a gratitude journal is not going to outweigh that. Or you still call yourself names all day long. So even though you're going through the motions of doing the things you think you're supposed to do, you're beating yourself up inside your brain all day. So it doesn't matter that you went to yoga and that you did everything that you thought healthy people do. It's that you haven't won this battle yet. So I think for all of us sometimes to just say, what could I subtract from my life? If we asked ourselves that question more often, I think it would free us up. I think we're only as good as our worst habits sometimes, and it just takes one to hold you back. And we're in this weird place in society where we feel like we need to add more. We always have to add more to our lives, and we have to be doing more. But I think we should just work smarter and not harder most of the time. And that's usually about saying, what's one thing I can subtract? And sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes we have like that friend who monopolizes so much of our brain power because they're always wanting something from us. Or we have somebody that we're complaining about all the time. And you think, how much time do I spend on this one person? Or maybe it's something that a project that we have that's way more energy consuming than we ever imagined. You think, well, is this still worth doing? Maybe not, but we're so afraid sometimes to give up on things or the habits that we already have. We're just, like you said earlier, we're on autopilot and we don't realize what we're doing and how we're sabotaging ourselves in the end.
And even like all of the negative forces around us, the more that you hate your enemies, even if you hate them at all, you're giving them power over your own body. I love that part of your book, where your blood pressure, your long-term health, your mood, all these things are being sacrificed so that you can hate these people who you see as doing bad to you or the world or whatever. And I'm definitely guilty of this. So how do we get around that?
I think just, first of all, recognizing it, how much we complain about certain people, how much like, oh, they shouldn't do that, or I can't believe they're doing this to me. And to then just remind yourself, well, how much mental real estate am I giving this person? And we only have so much time and so much energy. How much are you devoting to this person? And I'm guilty of it for sure, too, that you have a meeting with somebody for 1 hour, but you spend 3 hours dreading it. And then you spend the next 3 hours wishing you hadn't met with them. Well, just don't go to the meeting, right? Or when you have somebody in your life and you think, all right, maybe it's a relative, it's a cousin, it's your in-laws. Probably it's not going to serve you well to cut that person out of your life because it's going to affect your other relationships, just not feasible. Well, just recognize, okay, why am I now spending 3 hours complaining about this person's behavior that I don't like? Think about something else, talk about something else, and just really make sure that the people that you care about the most are the ones that are getting the most of your time and energy, not the people that you don't like or the people whose company you don't enjoy.
Yeah. Another big highlight of your work is reframing language, and the way that we speak to ourselves, the words that we use have an incredible effect over our physiology and our mental health. And especially when you combine that with the messaging we're getting from the news, from marketing, which more than ever, it seems to me, is based on impregnating everyone with fear, because that's a trigger to get people to buy things, to get them to vote a certain way, to get them to do whatever. And so we're up against all of this fear-based messaging, and that can't help but affect us in one way or another. And generally speaking, it just sets us down a very bad path where we're more insecure, we are fearful, we're not speaking to ourselves in an empowering way. So maybe you can just speak to for a moment about the power of that, because I think a lot of people don't realize what's going on.
Right. Just right down to like the language when we say, you know, I have to do this, or you know, even it's like I have to go to the grocery store. Well, you don't have to go to the grocery store. It's a choice. And to just recognize you know, sometimes there's a consequence. Yeah, if I don't go to the grocery store, I won't have any food to eat. But on the other hand, if I just remind myself I'm choosing to do this right now, it empowers you. And as you say, there's so much marketing that tells you if you don't buy this product, you're going to not look as good. And when you don't look as good, you won't be successful. Or if you don't buy this product, other people are going to perceive you to not be as happy or as wealthy or whatever. And so it's just, I think, again, about taking back your power and figuring out, who am I? What are my core values? What's important to me in life? Who do I want to be? And recognizing that, and to every once in a while hit the reset button and take a look at what are our outside influences and what's their agenda in sending me this message. So when you're, you know, a marketing company is really telling you that you better buy this product or else, well, obviously they want you to spend your money. It's not necessarily the truth. And I know you found this with expensive running sneakers, right?
Yeah.
That promise you're going to.
Oh, yeah. Shin splints. They don't promise shin splints, but they come with them sometimes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that's happening a lot, and I'm doing this myself, is you have to adapt, change your own little rules, your own little habits, depending on what's going on in the outside world. So generally, I wouldn't wake up and check social media or the news. But I found myself doing that for a while because you feel like you're going to miss out on something really big if you don't check it right away. That's a total myth most of the time, right? Like 99.9% of the time, it's a total myth. But I did notice on the days when I would do that, start off with, instead of meditation, or a lot of times I'll like to do a short spiritual reading of some kind, or studying symbology or something that's just kind of expansive in the morning. If you check the news or social media instead and spend your time there, what happens in your opinion? How does that day play out? I'd be happy to answer after you answer.
Right. So obviously the media is all about clicks these days, right? So they do all they can to create a headline that gets a click. They get paid usually by the click. Their advertisers are really looking for who's getting the most traffic, and that's where they spend their money. So then you think about that. Well, what's in their best interest when it comes to a headline? How often do you read a headline and then the article doesn't even match up with what the headline said?
Right.
And it's their job to make it sound like one small incident of something is a catastrophic problem. So whether there's an outbreak of some other disease, or, you know, down here in the Keys, we have dengue fever that a couple people have gotten from a mosquito. So it was like when the coronavirus news was more positive, they would come out with these other headlines that were like, if the coronavirus doesn't get you, you're going to die of dengue fever.
Right.
And so no matter what, the headlines are always doom and gloom and catastrophic. And their job is, again, to make it sound like you're going to get some strange virus or some sort of thing that's going to kill you, because it grabs your attention. Obviously, none of us want to die. So when we see a headline that convinces us we're in extreme danger, you want to read it so that we think we're informed and that we can then keep ourselves safe. Well, obviously, our heart rate goes up, our anxiety increases, and what we know from just watching the news, let's say you sit down and watch the 6 o'clock news, after the news is over, it takes 20 minutes for your body to calm back down again.
Wow.
So then you think, all right, well, what happens when we're checking social media every 20 minutes all day long? We're looking at the headlines on our phones, or you bring it up while you're checking your email. Our bodies are in this heightened state of arousal, probably for 24 hours straight, because we're never away from the news long enough. And when people will sometimes say, I took a break from social media for the day, or I didn't have my phone on because I went on this trip or this hike, and they'll say, I felt so much better. Well, it's no wonder why. For most of us, it's just so intoxicating to just get back on and check, well, what's going on now? But the more we do that, the more we keep our bodies in this state of arousal, and it's not good for us.
And we don't get anything done. You get into that reactive state where you're just kind of like chasing the next fear rabbit or whatever it is, or chasing the next thing that you must get done now because, but anyway, yeah. So my answer to that is I'm way less grounded if I check the news in the morning, no matter what the news says. And the most interesting part that I noticed, though, was even when I was checking the news and everything was really bad, there were only 1 or 2 days where like really bad stuff happened where I actually maybe needed to know, you know, like around wildfires or something, like a critical threat to like your actual life right now, as opposed to like all of the threats that are out there all of the time and being shoved in our faces, and, you know, fear dengue if you don't fear this, and fear, you know, that's not serving us, but it is affecting us big time. The problem is once you've done that damage in the morning, you don't get that back. Right. Like you don't really realize what happened. It's hard for you to link that up. But in any case, it's so important. And I read this throughout your books, Amy, that you need to protect your own mental space and focus on what serves you as opposed to just chasing all that reactive stuff, doubling down on the fear. Because it is it's attractive. It's enticing. It's intoxicating. Intoxicating is the perfect word for it. And a lot of people are addicted to, I must find that fear because that will set my priorities for the day. But if you set them for yourself, you can actually get something done.
Yeah, I think it's a difference of playing offense versus playing defense.
Yeah.
When we set ourselves up in the morning with thinking there's all this horrible stuff going on, it's like you play defense all day long and you don't ever actually say, what do I want to accomplish? How am I going to do it? How am I going to go out there and tackle the day? It's like the day runs you rather than you being able to run your day. So I think it's deciding, and first thing in the morning, how am I going to start my day off is huge. And that's a great way to take back your power.
We're coming up on time, but I want to make sure that you talk about a few other things. One is irrational fear of snakes, and the other one is how do we help kids handle this whole circumstance and an uncertain future. But let's start with that, just a quick touch on irrational fear, because you're from Maine, I'm from New Hampshire. That's not a place where we even have snakes that we have to worry about.
Right.
We have ticks you have to worry about. We have bears, we have other things like that, but it's not rational. That's the whole point of this fear. So how does that work?
Right. So we all have sort of a anxiety alarm bell in our brain. And for most of us, that alarm bell is broken. It goes off when you don't need it to go off.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that. I mean, I was in Maine over the summer and I saw a snake and immediately, you know, my heart races and I'm like, oh no, it's a little green snake that literally could do nothing to me if it wanted to. So luckily now I'm able to, I think just writing that sentence in the book about that helped because it just reminded me I'm not in any actual physical danger. My body reacts as though I'm faced with a rattlesnake or some sort of venomous creature that's about to kill me. But here it is, this little snake. And so even though my body reacts like I'm about to die and my heart races, my palms get sweaty and I think, and then of course that sets off in my brain all these thoughts about this is horrible, it's awful, run. Just a reminder of, okay, just because my body is, anxiety alarms are ringing loudly, they don't need to be, and I'm safe and this snake isn't going to kill me and it's fine and I don't have to run away. And so just talking back to that, and for all of us, we all have certain things that set off our anxiety alarm bells. Public speaking, for example, we act as though we're in a life or death situation and our bodies react like we're hanging off the edge of a cliff and about to die. So just reminding yourself, this isn't real, I'm not in any actual physical danger, and recognizing when we how we can calm our bodies down. Sometimes it's a few deep breaths. Sometimes it's just changing the thoughts that run through your head. Sometimes it's repeating something like, I'm safe, I'm okay. But for, you know, different people, sometimes people have a fear of driving over a bridge. We all have weird sort of irrational fears, and just recognizing just because your body tells you you're in danger doesn't mean that you actually are.
Yeah. Now, what about for kids, though? Because And you've written this in your books as well. Everyone has that feeling where we want to protect kids from fear and pain. That's not particularly useful, but it's even more complicated in today's world, right? Where there are a lot of other people, maybe teachers or just influences in your kid's life, who are giving them fear, who are giving them anxiety, who are giving them just lack of hope in the future, all these things that are out of your control. So what recommendations do you have for the parents out there and how they handle this crazy world we're living in now?
I think it's just about having upfront conversations with kids. I mean, just last year at this time, we were telling parents, don't give your kids too much screen time because you're going to damage their brains.
Right.
Well, and this year we're all, no, you can't go to school, so you have to stare at your iPad for 8 hours a day.
Right.
And well, you know, which is it? And so if you read any parenting magazines, sometimes they talk about, you know, the risks your kids face, but we don't talk about what happens, the risk of not letting your kids live life. and not letting them skin their knees, not letting them go swimming because something bad might happen. So I think for parents to just recognize that, yeah, life is risky, but not letting them get out there is even riskier, that kids need life skills. I teach college classes. I see what happens when kids don't have life skills and they get their first B on a test, or they get in an argument with their roommate. They crumble. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So, I think for parents to know it's okay. You don't have to talk your kids out of their fears, but you can help them face those fears slowly. If your kid is scared of elevators, you don't have to take the stairs your whole life, but you also don't have to say, don't be scared. Instead, you can accept, yep, you're scared of elevators. This is what we're going to do. We're going to step in an elevator, but not go up the elevator. We're just going to look at the elevator. We're going to watch the elevator. We're going to practice it. We're going to read books about it. And you just teach them about those things. And after a while, it gets a little less scary and a little less scary, because I've seen parents take it to the extreme when their kid's scared of something. So the parents are like, we're going to do this and we're going to get over this fear today. But then they terrify them and it sort of traumatizes the kid. So just take it one step at a time, whether your kid's afraid of monsters under the bed or they're terrified of trying out for a part in the play, whatever it is, just take it one small step at a time and let them know it's okay to feel scared, but I know you're strong enough to do it anyway, rather than tell them don't be scared. That's not a good message to give them.
Yeah. And it's important to make mistakes sometimes
Yes.
too, even potentially deadly ones. Like one that affected me more than almost any other is I loved riding mountain bikes and raced for a while when I was growing up. And when I was in junior high, I rode back and forth to school every day instead of taking the bus. And it was in the springtime, they had put down, you know this because you grew up in Maine, they put down all of that sand, and there are these big hills and all that. And so there was this big hill and I was bombing down it, going too fast. When I hit the brakes, I hit the sand over the asphalt instead of the asphalt, and I couldn't control the bike, and I ran into a tree, shattered my helmet, got a horrible concussion. And after that, I never rode my bike like that again. I never drove a car like that again. I've never been in a car accident. I've never been in another bike accident after that. And I've lived my whole life. I've never even gotten a speeding ticket. And that happened to me in junior high. And I didn't die. I got a horrible mulligan, concussion. Now I know how bad those are. So I didn't play football as long as I probably would have, knowing how bad concussions are, and just these cascades of good effects from something that could have killed me because it was a really dumb decision. But you can't prevent your kid from making that decision.
Natural consequences can be some of life's best teachers. And when we let kids make a mistake, let them get hurt a little bit, they learn from it. And, I'd much rather have a kid who grows up knowing that this is a bad idea because I might get hurt, rather than this is a bad idea because my parents told me not to do it. Because then as soon as you are out of their sight, we know that they're going to go do it. And so sometimes you just got to let them experiment and do things on their own, even when you think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're just about out of time, but Amy, before we go, please tell folks where they can find your work, your books, and what you're working on next.
So my website's the best place, Amy Morin, LCSW, as in licensed clinical social worker.com. And you can find my TEDx talk and info on my books on there. And my book number 4 comes out in March, which is 13 Things Strong Kids Do. I'm so excited to be getting in the kids space. And you can find info on my podcast as well, called Mentally Strong People.
Awesome. Your work is more important and more needed than ever. Especially, I'm excited about your kids focused book coming out a little bit later. So we'll be back in touch. Come back on this show sometime. We'll talk some more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, this is Abel, and I'm very excited to be here today to announce Vitamin C Stack from our family company, Wild Superfoods. So Vitamin C Stack is a high-quality source of different forms of botanical vitamin C, and it includes a rich balance of whole food sourced vitamin C from acerola mixed with ascorbic acid and plant bioflavonoids, including quercetin. So vitamin C Stack is in capsule form as opposed to Fizzy C, which is a powder. So the capsules for some people can be more convenient and easy to take depending on where you are and how you take it. So I actually like having both forms around. They're slightly different. And Vitamin C Stack is just one of the highest quality sources of vitamin C that we've ever been able to find. And so we're extremely happy to be able to offer this to you now. And if you sign up for Subscribe and Save, then don't forget you get access to our coaching community. So if you have any questions about Vitamin C Stack or anything else from Wild Superfoods, or if you just have a question for me, then don't forget to be in touch. Always love hearing from you. You can always find Vitamin C Stack and the other goodies at wildsuperfoods.com. We appreciate you. Please be in touch. This is Abel. We'll talk soon. Hey, it's Abel one last time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of Fat Burning Man. Before you go, please smash that like button, hit subscribe, or even leave us a quick review. It helps so much more than you even realize. And if you can think of someone else who you care about, friend, family member, anyone else who might appreciate this free show, then please take a quick second just to share it with them. Word of mouth is really the way that we've grown this show over the years. We have more than, at this point, 4 awards in independent media, 50 million downloads. We couldn't do any of this without you, so we really appreciate it. If you'd like to get in touch with me, then please follow me under Abel James or Fat Burning Man on your social media platform of choice, and I'll do my best to get right back to you. Now, if you want to keep this show coming to you, you can do something really quickly here. My wife Allison and I, along with a very small team, depend on listeners like you to make this show happen week after week. To join our next challenge coaching group or get in touch with me one-on-one, visit fatburningman.com. We also make group coaching free with your subscribe and save orders from our family company, Wild Superfoods, which you can find at wildsuperfoods.com. And if you'd like, you can throw a few bucks into the tip jar as a one-time donation or become a contributing member of our group on Patreon. Just look up Abel James on Patreon and you can join in the fun for as little as a few bucks and get my international best-selling book and audiobook as a special thanks. You can also find that page at fatburningman.com/tipjar. Now, a quick disclaimer for all those legal eagles out there. The Fat Burning Man Show provides general information and discussions about health and related subjects. The information provided in this show or in any related materials are not intended and should not be construed as medical advice, nor is the information a substitute for professional medical expertise, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions and views expressed on this show have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, health practice, or other institution, including corporate overlords. We don't have any of those. If you or any other person has a medical concern, I wholeheartedly encourage you to consult with your healthcare provider. Whew, okay. Don't forget to join our newsletter over at fatburningman.com. When you sign up for our email, I'll even send you a wild quick start guide along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes, even Allison's famous chocolate nut cookies, as a special thanks for signing up. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening and have a great week.